everyone. My name is Alyssa Pal. Welcome back to another episode of My Creative Pals podcast. We have a very special guest today. His name is Max DeVincenzo, and we're going to talk about some music production. So Max, if you could please introduce yourself and just tell our group what you do and who you are.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for including me in the Creative Pals roster. It's so nice to meet you and talk with you. I have been doing music basically my whole life. I grew up in the mountains and didn't have a ton of friends up there, to be honest. Most of my friends were down in town where I went to school. And so I found a lot of solace and interest in learning instruments. So I'd play drums all the time after school, and little by little that turned into recording. My dad had a multi-track recorder. I would try and make pieces on that, and would record drums and would compose doing that. And eventually it turned into a business, which I run nowadays, called Fox Tracks. And I've been doing that. We were just talking before the podcast started how that's been around for 10 years now, which is really amazing. And I'm enjoying every second of it. Like, I'm really grateful to have music as a source of inspiration and a place to put emotions and feelings into at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. And congratulations on 10 years.
Thank
so
you.
When you say 10 years, like, what does that mean for you? What happened 10 years ago?
That's a great question. I came up with a logo 10 years ago, which everybody knows is the very first thing that you do in a business before any kind of plan.
The logo.
Yeah, the logo, most important thing. But yeah, that was the first thing that I sat down. I was like, I want to do a studio, and I want it to be like nature related, I think, at the time. And it was almost called Fox Den. And then for some reason I didn't want that. It felt too kind of hold in, no pun intended.
Yeah.
So it turned into Fox Tracks, and I started coming up with logo ideas. And the very first logo is right here, actually.
Yes, peep the merch.
So funny. So I sketched that. It's got like treble clefs in it and sound waves. And
I never noticed those were treble clefs.
Yeah, every
it's
little
cool
thing you could tuck in there. So
yeah,
that was the first thing. I'm like, I'm going to do this. This is going to be a real thing. And that was kind of the beginning. And that was in 2015.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yep.
I can't believe it. I wanted to share how I found Fox Tracks and you through music.
Yeah.
Which, for those of you who don't know, I moved to Denver about a month ago in September 2024. I spent a lot of time in Boston and decided I wanted to get a change of pace in a new city, explore a new music environment. And I joined a bunch of Facebook groups about Denver Music Network, like anything you can think of. I just went on a deep dive on online to see who I can connect with before moving here and getting some roots. And I saw Denver Music Network, and then a post from Max saying, looking for pop soul vocals. And I was like, that's me. And I don't think I even told you, like, I'm not in Denver, not from Denver. I think I was just like, I sing.
Well, yeah, I was very vague about what I was looking for, too. I mean, I said for a project.
Yeah.
Right? It was like
very general, but it was exactly what we needed. And then we met up, and now here we are, forming a band and working together here in Denver. And we played at Lafayette Music Festival right here on this this turf. Yeah. So imagine, like, there were like, it almost looked like a farmer's market here, but like a music farmer's market. Like, everything was just decked out with like music schools and music networks and communities, and everyone was so kind, welcoming, sweet, supportive. It's a great community here. And it was such a great show. So yeah, that's kind of what we're up to.
Yeah, well, it's so cool how that worked out. And I don't know, it's just a great example of unexpected connections and networking. And what's the phrase? It's like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about all the vocalists that sent me stuff on Facebook. I did listen to every single person, and none of them were even, I mean, they're all great vocals in different ways, but none of them like really connected with me and what I was looking for. And you sent me I think you sent me a video from Berkeley.
Yeah.
No, from
Middle East,
in Boston. And it just became like this instant connection. I was like, wow, like, first of all, you're an amazing vocalist. Second of all, like, your tone is perfect. Like,
thank you.
The style of vocals is perfect. And then third, is that Boston? Like, why is that a video of Boston that you're sending me? Like,
is that the Middle East?
This was Denver musicians, and I was like, what's going on? So we just immediately connected on that. And
yeah.
I just thought it was so serendipitous and cool that your first show out here was a music festival that we were able to set up. And it's funny. I have my feelings about Facebook and social media, but like thanks to Facebook and thanks to like putting something out there and just asking and connecting with somebody, it's a really cool opportunity that came out of it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
very special.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it has been a great time so far. It's been around a month since I've been here, and there's so much more music to come. So stay tuned for everything. We're playing a gig actually Thursday, November 7th.
That's right.
This year, next week.
Yep.
The Roots in Boulder.
Yeah, it's a great venue. Great venue. We'll have fun there.
Yeah, I wanted to just ask some questions about what you're up to with music and specifically production. If you could share more about your journey becoming a music producer and what that means to you, because I know when we hear the word producer as musicians, it's like, what does that mean? It can mean a few different things.
All right, I love talking about this. Yeah, because you're exactly right. You say you're a producer, and it could be I'm a bedroom producer, and I make my own music on a laptop. It could be I'm a electronic producer, and I do that stuff, and I perform live. Or it could be the style, I think, of Quincy Jones style of production, where you're organizing the session and honestly comparing it to like a film producer, where you're just producers. They make things, and I think of it as producers make things happen. So they put all the pieces together. And my mission is always, when I'm working with an artist, is to ask them, like, what is your intention? What is your goal? Like, what do you want this music to be? And then from there, help them see every step of the process from where they are now to that final product.
Yeah.
And I think some people can produce their own music, but ironically, I'm not one of those people anyway. Like, I really value having somebody else's opinion and trajectory and motivation.
Yeah.
And it's really helpful for anybody. I think it's just a product of you've been so close to that music for so long, and you're attached to it, and maybe you are trying a bunch of creative ideas. It's easy to get stuck in the weeds, and it's easy to lose track and lose sight of that original goal. And I think that's what a producer is for, is helping direct the artist and guide them in the same path that they meant to go down originally.
Yeah.
So that's how I see music production, and each project is a little bit different. And nowadays, especially with home recording abilities and the resources we have available, like, artists are so self-sufficient now, and they're able to record a lot of things on their own. So each project is a little bit different. Maybe last week the artist is recording all their vocal tracks at home and editing those and comping them, sending them over to me. Maybe this week they need help setting up a mic, or they want to come into the studio and record vocals that way. So really approach each project completely differently and help empower whoever I'm working with in whatever way they need. It could be different every time.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a preference for working on other people's original compositions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done all kinds of music projects and done some branding pieces. I actually really like doing audio logos too, but one of the most satisfying things is helping somebody turn their song into a final product.
When you say audio logo, what do you mean by that?
Well, if somebody has like an animated logo that they put time and money into to get somebody to design it and the motion of it, to really feel that, I feel like you need some like sound design for it, basically. So there's different formats of it, but the most recent one I did was for like a software training company, and it was called Integrity.
Okay.
And so they had a logo moving through, and I designed every little motion of the logo in sound. So the first animation, it like hits the bottom, and I have to come up with like, well, what does that sound like? How heavy is this dot that this person designed? And I'll try like 17 different sounds until I get like the right weight for it.
Okay.
And it's so fun. It's like very, very detailed, and it's like doing a little tiny itty bitty microscopic short film score.
Yeah.
Really.
Like you're scoring this little thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. And when you said that you mostly work with other artists, I was surprised because I know you also write. So
Yeah.
So can you share more about your own original music, what it's like to produce your own music? Do you source another producer for that kind of project? Do you like to take it on yourself to practice? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. I think I've done the whole path of, from start to finish, I'm going to produce all of this music completely on my own. I did a whole album like that. And I did finish it, and I did put it out there. But looking back on it, I wish I had outside opinion and like a second set of ears on things.
Yeah.
And just honestly, it comes down to colors for me. if I'm a specific way and I like making music a specific way, that's one color in the palette, and involving other collaborators can brighten your sound or change your sound or add more colors to it in a way where you'll feel more proud of that final product because of the collaboration. So I do produce my own music, but I always try to get somebody involved in it in some way just for inspiration. I just don't want to get stuck in my own thoughts and ideas only.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask, what is the name of the album that you put out? Do you want to share it? Do you want to?
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Sure.
plug it?
Yeah, it's on Bandcamp. And this was a product of like working on all of this myself, but I didn't really market it. By the time I was done with it, it's like so sensitive and like so close to it. I just like put it on Bandcamp and maybe told a couple people, but
yeah,
it's called Suspended Dreams.
Okay.
And the album cover is this woman like floating in, you don't know if it's like water or space or air, but kind of like suspended. And,
whoa.
And yeah, I think at the time I had just come back from college and I was very hurt by that, and I was like, oh, my dreams have been put on hold. And so I named the album that because it felt like I had all this momentum and energy and interest, and it had to be put on hold and suspended. But then it's like all these different meanings. I don't know. I love wordplay and stuff like that. I thought it was the most clever thing at the time.
Something I wanted to ask is, do you have a specific DAW that you typically reach for or that you work best in?
Yeah, I just learned on Pro Tools. Like I had a really good mentor friend of mine, Bob Burnham, and he, on his own accord, decided that he wanted to help produce a record with me and showed me how to use Pro Tools in the process. That's just what he used, and so I got stuck on that, and I'm most comfortable with that now. I have used Logic and Ableton, and for electronic music, I think Ableton is very strong, and for composing and just like ease of use, Logic is really strong too. So they all have their different benefits.
I would work in Pro Tools if I hadn't my iLock.
Yeah, right. I know that's the thing about Pro Tools you have to watch out for is the iLock. It's a pain in the butt. They know what they're doing.
They got it all. You can't mess around with it. You need a license. You need the iLock. You need a lot of different things. But once you're set up, you should be good to go. I think I had a subscription through my studies, and then it ended, and so now I'm between Pro Tools moments. So but that's cool. So what I've heard that Pro Tools is more like you said, suitable for like live recording and that true instrument sound. When you use Pro Tools, do you mostly record live instruments like or do you use it for a lot of other like produced sounds that you add in the box, like post-production?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, this can kind of lead into a conversation about production in general, I think, because Pro Tools does do certain things really well, and one of them is recording. Like, it's very well set up for recording a lot of instruments or tracks at the same time, and then also for mixing and editing. Like, I really have the best. If I wasn't using Pro Tools, I would have a really hard time editing. Honestly, it's just like very good for that.
Yeah,
and it's what I use for music editing on Full Circle, which came out last year, and just being able to like be familiar with the program and put out the final product quickly is really important. But having to do with the production, do a lot of recorded instruments in Pro Tools and stuff in the box. So all of the same plugins that you can use in Logic or Ableton, you can use in any DAW. As you know, like you pull it up and you can compose, or you can synthesize sounds. You can do like sound design in the program the same way.
Yeah.
One thing that Pro Tools does well is you can sample sounds and then edit them. Like I was saying, you can edit the audio a lot easier. And then, like I was saying, it just depends on the production. So if it's a live recording for an album or for a piece of music, which I recommend in certain situations, for jazz, I would never want to like overdub tracks, right? That just seems kind of sacrilegious for some reason. So
what you mean by that is like tamper with a live sound in the jazz setting, like
by
adding like produced sounds? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that, and also like in pop records, you track today's drum tracking day, and you sit down and you do all the drums for the record, and then next day you come in and you do bass and then guitar. And for styles like jazz, which is so live and organic and improvised, I'm like, I would never do that for a jazz record. Like, they all have to be in the room at the same time. Versus pop, like, we want to do the opposite because we want to get the absolute best, cleanest, most malleable and able to manipulate recording that we can get. So we're going to do vocals I mean, in outer space if we could, like away from everything else, right? Just like totally quiet and isolated so that we can pull out every last little bit of detail from that. So different types of music are made in completely different ways. And I think people get stuck with that when they're finished with their song and they want to know how to produce it. They get stuck with choices.
Direction.
And direction.
Yes. Yep. We've been talking a lot about this. So I'm curious to hear your take on, like, for example, you have an idea for a song. Let's talk about original music. So let's do away with, like, if we were to do a cover song, because that might look different as it is. Yep. But if you were to write an original song, how would you make the next choice of, okay, first of all, what usually comes first for you? Chords, lyrics, melody? Man. How does it come to you?
Oh, this is such a good question. I could talk about this all day. It's changed so much over the years, and I think the thing that's helped me the most has been whatever that first nugget of inspiration is, and it could be anything. It could be an image. It could be the sound of leaves crunching, and you sample it and put it in your DAW. It could be one note for melody, or it could be a policy, which I'll talk about in a second, but just like a completely different a new concept they haven't thought of before. Like, how can I do a musical merry-go-round, or how can I do musical shapes and make those represented in audio? Whatever that first seed is, or that nugget, like that's a propulsion. And getting away from like, oh, I need to start with chords or melody or whatever. That's been the most helpful. And then the second thing, which is really counterintuitive, that's been it's helped me like actually get songs finished and like find the right direction. You have that nugget, you have that thing that you started with, the seed, and then you let the song blossom a little bit. Sometimes you have to kill the seed. You have to get rid of, even if it was the first thing that started the song, the whole song could develop in a certain way, and it's like, oh, that's not fitting anymore. So it comes down to being detached from your music while you're making it in some way, and letting it go the way it wants to, and letting it grow the way it wants to.
So where's the balance there? At what point do you say, no, I'm going to set a boundary here because I want to write a song about this, or no, this truly is about, the initial song seed. Like, at what point do you let it grow its own legs?
Oh man, it's so tricky, right? Because you don't want to harness the music too much, but you do want to give it direction, right? Like you're saying. And I think just in time, your inner compass gets better and better, and the less ego is involved, the better your compass gets. So it's boundaries, but it's also this trust that if you're making the music in whatever process is available to you, even if you're drawing inspiration from something else, or you're like, maybe I'll come back and change these chords, like it is authentic to you, and like it will be your music, and just letting it go from that. So honestly, I think like detaching and letting it run as much as possible is the best way to go, because you will unintentionally and subconsciously direct it in the way that you want it, just because of your taste.
And so you, as a well-seasoned producer, you might have, maybe, who knows, maybe it's easier for you to sit down and actually get something done, to go from a song seed or the initial idea to a final product. But for someone who's sitting at home with an idea and is like, okay, hi, my name is so-and-so. I've written 30 songs since the time I was 15 years old. I'm a musician, but I never took it to the next level. What would your advice be to them? How can they move forward with, I have all these ideas. How can I take it to the next level? People might write it off because they might say studio time is too expensive. These are excuses I've heard from people in this situation. And I hear it all the time. I have a lot of voice students that come in and they say, oh, I've written a few songs, but I'm never going to share them. And I say, why? But I think it's because of that challenge of how to take it from this baby to the whole project that it's meant to be, and that it should be, that it's capable of being. So what would you recommend to someone who's in that position where they're going, I'm ready, but where do I go? Who do I talk to? What do I do?
You have to write the bad songs too. And you can't expect every single piece of music that you put out to be the absolute best, but it's my opinion that ideas come through us and then they have to leave, and then we can get to the next idea, the next inspiration. And I have a lot of songs that I've been working on for years, and I got to a stopping point. I'm like, okay, not feeling anything now. And then I go and do something else for a little while, have more life experiences, and come back to it, and just so quickly writes itself just because it wasn't ready in the moment. So there's that balance of, don't rush anything, but also keep the creative flow going as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then for the challenge of actually producing the music, I always give people the example of rent, right? It's paying your rent is a priority. It's something that's really important to you, obviously, because you want to live in a house, you want to have safety and shelter and everything. That's huge. And for music, it's like if you look at it as an expense or something that's really important to you, something that will nurture you, something that is meaningful to you, it's an easier way to justify spending money on it, right? Comparing it to, I don't know, people spend $1,200 to $2,000 a month on rent, and then that money is gone, and you have the house to live in for that month, but then it comes around again, you pay it again. Music, if you invest some of that time and money into it, you will always have it, and you'll never have the regret of, oh, if I had only tried, or if I'd only put this music out there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's all about priorities and justification. People will justify spending money on all kinds of things, and just making sure that it's something that's actually important to you.
Yeah, just not making that excuse of, oh, it's about money. Well, when is it ever going to be free? Never. So
never be free.
It's a commitment. Yeah,
and you can do it all yourself, but will you?
Yeah, probably not.
Right, and that's where a producer, like a studio, or some kind of accountability, like we were talking about yesterday, just a container for it. Like, I'm going to. That's the best thing you can do. Book a show. If you want to finish writing your songs, book a show where you perform your finished songs.
The goal.
Yeah, put an end date to it.
Yeah.
Because everything else has an end date and requirements and timeline, and your music doesn't. So why would you spend time working on it if there's no confinement?
That makes sense, and that's super helpful for people who are stuck in that space. It reminds me of in my art classroom in middle school, my art teacher had something on the wall. Shout out. It said, in quotes, "I could have done that." End quote. Yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you could have, but you didn't. Like, we could all sit there and watch someone doing something we want to do, say, I could do that. But it's until you sit down and you do it. Like, you can talk about what you could do all day, but I think that's something that's come up a lot on this podcast with some other friends, and like just one of the biggest struggles of being an artist is that relationship to what we're creating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting over these mental hurdles. Yep. And I say in voice lessons too, I'd say more than half of it is mental. Yeah. Most of it is how you think about the note before you sing it.
Yeah. Most
of it is how you approach the note before you sing it. And it's just like music production, I suppose. It's just getting yourself to sit down and do it and work on the thing that deserves that time.
Yeah, and music is sensitive, and you're talking about like look, what I was envisioning when you're saying that is going to a show and seeing somebody on stage, and then musicians are usually very quick to criticize or say, I could, and whether they speak about it or not, people are always comparing and say, oh, I could do this. This person is up on stage performing their songs, and like I could do that, and they could do this and this better. And it's really easy to be in that position, but to get to where that person is, actually looking at all of the hurdles and bumps and insecurities and stickiness that you have to go through to actually get there, it's kind of painful to look at and work through, but it's part of the process.
Yeah.
Of, oh man, like I thought this song was really good and I performed it and people didn't like it. And like just going through that and getting stronger from it. So a lot of it is fear, but I think sometimes the only way to get through it is to actually
do it. Yeah, to try.
Exactly.
What kind of feedback have you gotten before that? I'm wondering, do you have a story or a moment in time when you've gotten feedback, positive or negative, where you're like, oh.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this interesting thing because feedback is really tricky too. And I'd say only take feedback from people that you like really respect and aspire to, be like them. And yeah, absolutely. That album that I was talking about, it's instrumental. And it was never supposed to be instrumental. And I released it without any vocals on it because I wrote all these lyrics for it. And I started recording the lyrics. And again, torn on this, but somebody said like, oh, the vocals are not good. Like I don't think that you're a good vocalist for this. And it may have been true, but I would have rather put it out there and tried and seen what the response actually was from the finished product, which this person never heard. And even if it was a rejection of the vocals, it gives me it gives me a direction. It's like the rejection of it will give you a direction for growth. I think like any kind of resistance that you feel in your life is the direction that you need to push in if you want to get better. So I never got that that resistance. So I never worked on my vocals, and I never tried to get better at it. I never released this album in the full image that it was supposed to be in.
Oh my gosh. Do you think if that feedback was given to you differently, that you would have handled it differently? Like, imagine if that person said, Max, you have a great album here, great lyrics, let's work on your vocals. And maybe if you had taken some time to improve that somehow, I mean, whether it's working on your own vocal technique or finding another singer, like, would you have handled it differently, do you think?
Maybe. I think it was also a product of where I was at with my music, which was extremely attached. And this is something I would recommend people not do, is saying, like, this is going to be my life's work. Like, this is going to be the best album that I ever made. I'm going to put everything into it and, like, too much of myself into it. And so I was the album, and I was the music. And when he made a comment on the music, he was making a comment about me. And so I've since learned that the security to know, like, this is what I want to do. This is the kind of music that I want to make. And the music is not me. I didn't put like my everything into this one all at once, you know. So I think it was a product of that. But it's also a product of not having a producer. You know, I was producing that album myself, and if I had somebody who was very honestly but gently and encouragingly giving me feedback on things as I was working on them, and just giving me a heads up before it was like recording day for the vocals, like, hey, work on this, this, and this. Yeah. Like, maybe it would have been fine, you know, but I didn't have that feedback or guidance or mentorship from anybody.
Yeah. Huh. I also thought, like, auto-tune.
Yeah, totally.
Like, there are ways around vocals that don't go as planned, but
yeah. And one more thing I'll say about it, and this is where this person was right, is I was trying to sing. I thought I could do everything at the time. And on that album, I don't think I mentioned this, but I recorded drums, I recorded bass, I recorded guitar, I recorded keyboards, I wrote all the horn arrangements, and I did all the recordings for everything. I mixed it and I mastered it. And then I was trying to do vocals, and like, oh, I can do all of these things and best represent my music the way that I intended. And it's just not the case. And I've learned that, like, I have things that I'm really good at, and it's, you know, it's writing music, composing, arranging, and playing the drums. And I can get by on bass a little bit. I'm not a great guitar player. I'm not a great vocalist. I could be if I wanted to. But if I just had that detachment and gotten somebody like you to sing the vocals or a different guitar player, a different bass player, I think the album would have come out better and stronger, and it would have been more what my music deserved.
Yeah. And is that your most recent release of your own original music?
Oh, kind of. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I've put like small things out there, but there's never been like a full album.
Okay.
And I have to admit, like, there's a little bit of I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite sometimes, because I tell people, I'll put this music out there, you have all these amazing songs, and again, I need a producer for this, who's not me.
Yeah.
To look at my hard drive of like 500 pieces of music that have like been started.
Oh my gosh.
That either needed to come out and they are what they are and I won't release them, or I need to go through and like finish them.
Yeah.
And take my own advice. There's a moment in music production and composition where the creativity turns into just like actual work.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to like go to the next, you know, spark of inspiration and that quick, you know, dopamine hit of like, ooh, what is this?
Yeah.
Instead of sitting down and like comping vocal takes, or sitting down and like recording X, Y, and Z, or hiring a musician to do X, Y, and Z. You know, it's the not fun part of music. Yep. Which, last thing I'll say, is really important to talk about, because people get really burnt out and discouraged that they're not enjoying every second of the process. And like, hey, it's work. Sometimes, like, it's hard. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, we've talked a lot about delegation, and at what point do you say, okay, I'm a vocalist, I am a singer-songwriter, I'm going to hire someone, I'm going to invest, I'm going to pay someone to help me with this, and to not just get wrapped up on, I have to do it all. Right. And knowing when it's time to delegate. And I think a good example is like chart writing. If you have a chart or a lead sheet that you want written right, you should probably write it yourself.
Yeah, we found that out recently, huh?
We sure did.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, people can only work with what they're given, but at the same time, it's like, if you have a vision, sometimes it is easier to just to just roll those sleeves up and get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're literally good at everything, which nobody is.
No one is.
Nobody is. I would say pick the things that you enjoy the most, you're most passionate about, that you need control over, and that you're good at. Like, pick those few things, and then let everything else go. If there's somebody else who can do it better and quicker for a little bit of money and make your record better and like save you time to do the things that you're good at, that's the way you should do it. You should delegate. But it's choosing. So like some people are not good at doing charts, and they should have somebody else do the charts. It depends on the music, depends on who you are, but
every time. Well, that's super helpful. I mean, I feel inspired.
Good.
I am definitely sitting on a song right now that I've written. It's the What Do I Say one.
Yeah, I love that song.
I really want to release it, and I've worked on it a lot, but I haven't done the hard part, which is sitting down and editing the vocals.
Yeah.
So like
right.
I'm taking what we're saying right now, and like you said, like it's kind of hypocritical in some ways because we preach all this, like, but we got to practice what we preach, and that's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah,
so.
Do as I say, not as I do, right? It's
I'm like, well, when's your last release?
Oh man, you're getting me excited about it too. But it's about accountability from a mentor or a partner, right?
Yeah.
That's really important, and it's about prioritization, all things that we talked about, and how could you justify spending time on something that has no deadline? That there's other things that will always be more pressing until you prioritize your music.
Yeah. It's like almost, it reminds me of like a wound. Like imagine, it's kind of a weird analogy, but it's how I'm envisioning it. Like your music is like an open wound. It's like, it's calling to you. It needs attention. You're not going to ignore a cut. Like you're going to cover it up with a Band-Aid or work on it or do something to make it better. It's like trying to imagine it that way, like a true timeline. Like you wouldn't, if you're being called to write something, then it's your destiny. That's my belief. Like, if you have that feeling of I have an idea, or I'm born to be a singer, I'm born to be a singer-songwriter, I'm born to do this, that's your destiny. And it's just a matter of like catering to that and feeding it, letting it grow.
I like that comparison because to make music that we're emotionally connected to, it takes some digging. It takes being sensitive and close to it.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a separation that we can make where it's the creative process is being attached to it and being close. And once you get to that point where the song has legs, we'll say, now it's time to let it go a little bit and pull back from it a little bit and let the more functional manual time and effort go into it, where you take that and you lead it by the hand to like wherever its final destination is. And trusting somebody else to help you with that, and also detaching from it when you're doing stuff like editing vocal takes, but because that's like not inspiring and it's not emotionally connected.
You're just
and
sitting there,
sitting at a computer and doing work, and like that's not creative. So maybe there's like delineation.
Yeah, totally. Man, well that's already helpful even for me. So thank you so much.
Yeah. The only other thing I would want to leave people with is, as you're working on this stuff, as you're working on your music, serve the music. Like whatever the song is asking for, let that happen. When you're working with a producer or by yourself, just make sure that you listen to what the music wants throughout all of it. So
let it be what it's meant to.
Let it be. Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Awesome. Well, Max, thank you very much for your time and for your wise words and sharing what your experience is like as a music producer and overall awesome person.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this conversation is so inspiring, and I really appreciate you taking the time to ask these questions and talk about this stuff and the complicated things and the hard things, and hopefully it gives lots more people inspiration too. So thanks for doing what you're doing.
We'll see you soon.
All right, see you soon.